Hi folks, so in this video I'll share with you some insights that may guide you when you want to acquire land in Ghana or property in general. And these insights come from my professional background and also some experiences I've gathered acquiring land for myself and for others in Ghana. So I know there are many people who have been able to acquire land successfully with little to no problems. I know there are many others too who have encountered problems acquiring land for themselves in Ghana. Problems that may have led to loss of money and all that. And perhaps such people will relate more to the content of this video. But I want to tell you that even if you've acquired land previously successfully, encountering little to no problems, that does not mean that in your next purchase, that is if you intend to acquire land again, you wouldn't encounter any problems. So you may want to watch this video to the end. But then if you have any stories to share or any experiences to share with regards to land acquisition in Ghana, whether positive or negative, you may leave them in the comment section. Also, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel and share to others. So if you ask me, I'll say that the root cause of the many issues that surrounds land acquisition in Ghana is the structural or systemic challenges that characterizes many of our institutions in Ghana. And of course, our land administration system is not spared of these structural challenges. So the strategy in acquiring land is to maneuver your way around some of these structural challenges. But even before I get to the steps, the process of acquiring land, let's understand briefly how land ownership works in Ghana. So in Ghana, the original ownership of land, what we call allodial title, is held in two major ways. So we have what we call customary lands, which are lands that are managed and controlled by traditional authorities. Then we have state lands or public lands, and these are lands which are managed or controlled by the states through the Lands Commission. In fact, there is a third type called vested lands. So these lands are owned customarily, but they are managed by the states through the Lands Commission. And customary lands form the majority of the lands we have here in Ghana. I think about 70 to 80% of the total land we have here in Ghana are customary lands. So when we buy land in Ghana, what is happening is that we are either buying from these original owners, it being the traditional authorities or the states, or we are buying from an individual or entity who bought the land from these original owners and they are reselling their interests. And because the law in Ghana restricts freehold ownership of land, when we buy land in Ghana, we mostly get a lease. Also, for many of us, we are more likely to buy customary lands, and this is for the simple reason of the customary lands being the majority of the lands we have here in Ghana. Unfortunately, customary lands also carry more risks. They are more prone to litigation issues and all that. So in brief, this is how land ownership works in Ghana. Now let's go to the land acquisition process. So in my view, I think the most important factor that determines the success of the land transaction is the genuineness of the person you are dealing with. So the person you are dealing with can either be the owner of the land themselves or it could be a third party. This third party can also either be a professional real estate agent or some informal middleman. So let's contrast this to what happens in advanced countries or a more regulated society, more regulated environments. So you realize that in a regulated system, the land transactions or property transactions almost always go through the right professionals, like a real estate agent, professional real estate agent, or a real estate lawyer. In Ghana, however, the system is largely informal. Even transactions that go through professional real estate agents in Ghana have do not have a structured form to it. Another factor that I believe influences or contributes to the success of the acquisition process is the location of the land. So in Ghana, or should I say in Accra, especially in Accra, there are some areas which are litigation hotspots, land litigation hotspots characterized by land guard activities, land disputes, and all that. Other areas are more peaceful. So the truth of the matter is that you have to carry out your due diligence. Land acquisition or property acquisition is a legal process, and you have to be guided by two legal principles. The first one is caveat emptor. So this is a Latin phrase, and it means that as a buyer, you need to beware. The next one is nemo dat quod non habet. This is also a Latin phrase. In law, they use a lot of Latin, which also means that one cannot give what they do not have or what they do not own. This means that a person who intends to sell land to you should have the legal right to be able to sell the land to you. They should own the land to be able to sell to you. So you have to do your due diligence. So how do you do your due diligence? So I'm about to list some due diligence steps you may take, and I'll tell you the limitations of each of these steps. So the first due diligence step you can take is to visit the site to inquire from neighbors or nearby landowners on the ownership history, or if there are any disputes on the land or multiple claimants on a piece of land. The limitation here is that this may not yield any results, especially in more new sites in areas that are sparsely inhabited. You might not meet many neighbors who can give you any useful information. The next step is to conduct a search at the lands commission, or should I say you should conduct a search at the various government institutions that are mandated to keep records on land ownership. So the most notable amongst them is the lands commission. So there are other institutions, but I believe because of their unreliability in keeping this carrying out these mandates, they are less spoken about, but I'll talk about them shortly. But how do you conduct a search at the lands commission? You submit or you present a site plan of the piece of land you intend to buy to the lands commission. They check their records and they produce a report, a search report, which will tell you the past transactions on the land, ownership history on the land, and all that. The search report even tells you whether the land is a state land or not. The limitation here is that if a person buys land and they fail to register their interest at the lands commission, conducting a search at the lands commission won't show that person's interest. So this is testament to one of the structural inefficiencies I spoke about earlier on. In more advanced countries where the systems are well regulated and the systems function effectively, as I mentioned earlier, land transactions or property transactions go through right professionals who ensure that the right quarters or right institutions are informed about such transactions. In Ghana, where land transactions or property transactions are largely informal, many people don't even bother to register their lands. So you might carry out this due diligence step of conducting a search, but still not be protected against litigation issues. Another institution that keeps records on land ownership or transactions is the customary land secretariats. So in Ghana, where majority of our lands are customary lands, by law, the traditional authorities who are in charge of managing these customary lands are required to set up an office called a customary land secretariat to administer the lands under them. Again, because of these structural inefficiencies or systemic inefficiencies and challenges that I've earlier mentioned, these customary land secretariats are not able to carry out this mandate effectively. Let me also add that in some areas, you see, customary land secretariats are specific to the various, traditional areas that we have. So there are some areas where the customary land secretariats are more effective than other areas. Another due diligence step you can take, so this is the third one, is conducting a search at the courts using our court system. So if a piece of land is a subject matter of any litigation in court. The court will have a record on that. So what some land buyers do before they pay for land is to conduct a search at the court to find out if the piece of land they intend to buy is a subject matter of any litigation in court. The limitation here also is that not all land disputes end up in court. In fact, there are many land disputes that do not end up in court. So you might conduct this court search but not find any litigation on that piece of land. Meanwhile, there's one litigation issue brewing behind the scene. So the reality is that almost every piece of land is susceptible to litigation, and you can do all these due diligence steps and still be confronted with some of these litigation issues. So what can you do as a land buyer? So as I said from the beginning, a lot depends on the genuineness of the person you are dealing with. I know this may be quite difficult to tell. You can never tell who is genuine, but at least to the extent of your capacity, ensure that the person you are dealing with is genuine. The next thing is to do your due diligence. So even though the due diligence steps are not perfect, I think they are non-negotiable, because once you take these due diligence steps, especially conducting a search at the Lands Commission, it puts you in a stronger position even if issues arise at the end of the day. The next thing is to take physical possession of the land after paying for the land. So once you've conducted all your due diligence steps and have decided to pay for the land and acquire it, you should take physical possession immediately after. So what do I mean by taking physical possession? So you can decide to build a fence wall right after acquiring the land. Sometimes the land is already fenced. So what some people do is to build a simple structure for a caretaker. So this is what this does for you. So the fence wall, for instance, will secure the boundaries of the land. Then also the building a small structure for a caretaker, you get someone to take care of the land for you. But it also reveals hidden interests. So in Ghana, once you begin to do any form of construction, it is not uncommon, or you should expect people to appear to make claims on that piece of land. So these claims may or may not be legitimate, but it's important for some of these issues to arise at the very beginning when payment has just been made. Money is very fungible, and so you would not want to wait till sometime in the future before some of these issues on claims and land disputes arises. You would want some of these disputes to arise at the very beginning so that they can be resolved immediately. It's easier to resolve the issues when payment has just been made. So as I said, land acquisition, there are many people who have been able to acquire land without even bothering about all these due diligence steps, and they've been successful about it. There are many people too who have faced challenges, encountered a myriad of problems acquiring land, and perhaps these people will relate more to all these steps I have mentioned. But always remember that as a buyer, you have to be aware. So I believe you found this video insightful. If you did, kindly hit the like button, share to others, and also subscribe to my channel. If you have any experiences, stories to share, you can leave them in the comment section so we all discuss. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.